The conversation you're about to hear is between myself and Lindsay Tjepkema. She is a CEO and co-founder at Casted, which is like a really aggressive startup that's going on here in Indianapolis. Lindsay and I have crossed paths over the last couple of years as both female CEOs leading companies and also leading alongside our husbands and our families. Her husband also has a great big job like mine. And so offline, off microphone, we've shared some notes and really, I would say, sort of found a friendship in one another, knowing that our paths are so parallel. So it only made sense for me to bring Lindsay on and have her share a little bit about her journey and what she's learned in a 2-career family, running a company with a lot of visibility and a lot of pressure and excitement in her life. I'm your host, Tiffany Souter, and this is Scared Confident. All right, Lindsay. I feel like I'm podcasting with the podcast. This is like very meta for Lindsay, the podcast girl, to be on a podcast. I wanted to have Lindsay on today because we circle in the Indianapolis business community and have had lots of like over a slow glass of wine talks about what it's like to be moms in 2 career homes. But I would love to sort of reflect, if you look back at like your 8 to 12-year-old self, what did you think you would be doing at your, what are you, almost 40?
Yeah, no, I'm 29.
Yeah. I was like, oh my word, yes. Are you actually?
Yeah, no, I'm 39 actually. Weirdly, some version of exactly this and also not this in any way, shape, or form. I've always been like on the stage. That's always been my life. So anything theater or drama or, getting dressed up and being center stage has always been my thing. Put a bat or a ball in my hand and I know zero what to do. But yeah, being on stage and telling the story has always been my jam, even when I didn't know that was a thing. And then business. I'm an achiever and I like to win and I hate to lose and I like to build things and I love to be creative. And I always pictured myself in an office building something. So from that standpoint, exactly this, like being a founder of a marketing technology company where I get to be creative and spend a lot of time speaking, exactly this. But all the intricacies of being a founder and all the time that you spend doing things that you never even knew existed in business and never prepared for in any way, shape, or form. And then the home life. I always thought that I would have a husband and kids, and I am so blessed to have both. But other things they don't tell you, which we've talked a lot about, is how challenging it can be to have it all and have all the things and to keep it all alive.
So when you talk about like as a kid, you love to win, how did you discover that? Because I also am not sporty. So how did you learn that? Because I think it's always interesting if you weren't competitive in like soccer or pick whatever. How did you learn that?
I was married when my husband pointed out to me that I'm competitive. And because I had always equated, to your point, I had always equated being competitive with being athletic. They were synonymous to me. And at one point we were talking and I was like, oh, well, I'm not competitive. And he laughed really hard. He laughed. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're the most competitive person I know, like on the planet. And we had this funny conversation and I was like, well, you're joking. And he started to point out, hold up a mirror. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. And I loved school. I was a big nerd. I loved school. I know a lot of people don't. I did. And so looking back, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was competitive with myself. I was an achiever. I wanted to win. I wanted to get the grades. I wanted to get the accolades. I wanted to learn. I wanted to challenge myself. And I was competitive with myself for how much I could do and how much I could know and how much I could create. I did not realize it at the time, but looking back, oh yeah, absolutely.
So what did your mom do when you were growing up? Did she stay home? Did she work outside?
She's a teacher.
Okay.
Yep. And she was pretty much the breadwinner in the family. So my dad was like an hourly worker. He drove like trucks and vans, like local delivery things. And my mom was a teacher.
What I want to understand is like, what did you grow up around? Like who cared for you? Did you go to a neighbor's house, have a grandma close? What did it look like?
A little bit of everything. So my sister's 6 years older. So it's just me and my sister as far as siblings, but she is 6 years older. So when I was 6, she was 12. When I was 10, she was 16. So after school was typically my sister, because my mom would be home an hour later. She was a teacher. She was basically wrapping up and getting home. And then before school, it was always kind of a hodgepodge of the neighbor or the friend for an hour or so. And then when I got a little older, my dad would be around late enough because my mom, teacher, had to get there really early and my dad would be there. Other than we were really little, my mom's friend stayed home and watched me and her daughter up through kindergarten. But other than that, there was never really a need for like actual childcare for me.
So did you picture always, since your mom worked, that you would work? Like the idea of being a stay-at-home mom between the ages of whatever and was that ever on your radar as an option?
No. However, because my mom was a teacher, it was a smack in the face of like, I remember vividly like going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do in the summer? Like, we have these kids who are going to be here in the summer. Like, what are we going to do? And so, yeah, there have been a lot of things over the last 11 years since I became a parent that have been, I'm starting to realize now how much my mom was there because she was a teacher.
So deciding to be a business owner, whether it be either spouse, is very much a we decision. If your spouse isn't on board, it's hard by itself. If your spouse isn't on board, it's like darn near impossible. So I'd love to hear what that was like with you and your husband at this sort of convergence points in your career when you realized you had this idea, you were going to create the opportunity to be able to maybe birth it. What did that ground zero look like for you guys?
So my husband, Mike, and I are really, in a very good way, and sometimes to a fault, we are very encouraging of each other and sometimes enabling of each other professionally. And so we talked through it more so as encouragers and like lifelong career coaches of each other. Oh yeah. And then there is our relationship in our family, like for that decision. There was just a whole lot of like, how can you not do it? How can I not do it? Of course I'm going to do this. But most of the conversations were professional. And then it started to turn into, wait, what's this going to look like for our kids and for our family and for us? And my husband, until literally a week ago, was traveling 3 to 5 days a week. And how's that going to work? Especially when you're starting a business, you literally don't know. You can't like ask the people who work there what the day-to-day is like. And so on one hand, it's up to you to decide, which is very cool. But on the other hand, it is the definition of unknown. It just doesn't exist yet. So lots of conversations about, of course, we're going to do this. This is such a great opportunity. And then as far as family, it was like, we're just going to figure it out.
Looking back at that conversation today, how many years has it been?
3.
That's what I was going to guess was 3. What advice would you give yourselves today looking back and say like, have this conversation or don't underestimate this, or you thought this was going to be a bigger deal than it was?
I think being more intentional about, hey, there's so much we don't know. How can we control the things we do know? Because of how uncertain this is surely going to be, what can we commit to now? What can we do to have some sort of stability or consistency throughout? And we fell into a couple of those things, which is good, but I think that would be smart.
Like practically, what does that mean? And maybe some things you and Mike have instituted or tried that have worked or haven't, because I think we can all learn from that.
Some of the things that we didn't anticipate, we just fell into in a bad way, where the we'll just figure it out was, he was traveling. And so we just made it work. I mean, sometimes it was week to week, day to day of who's going to be there for the kids, who's going to do the doctor's appointment. And that's because we didn't have that conversation. Some of the good things have been realizing that no matter what, our kids do come first. And that's been great to see, regardless of what's been happening. Like we make sure that when we're home and that we're snuggled up with the kids watching a movie and we're there. We have found ourselves prioritizing that without ever really talking about it. And typically that has to be the weekends, because the weeks are have over the last 3 years been so unpredictable. It's like, okay, well, Saturdays and Sundays, we are here and we are together, and it's pretty non-negotiable. I mean, obviously there's things that happen on the weekends, but we rarely prioritize the family, and that wasn't a discussion that we had.
I remember, I don't know, maybe almost a year ago now, we were talking and there was a water line. You were like, I think I could be drowning.
I think
and I'm
so,
like,
yeah.
Okay, let's chat. And I was like, what help do you have? And you were like, what do you mean?
What are you talking about?
What do you mean by help? So let's talk through that, because I think understanding the help I had helped you understand, like, oh, I have permission to do is that how it works? 'Cause I also had to learn that from other women because it was not what was modeled in my own home, which sounds like same, like sort of made it work, which is what you and Mike were trying to do is, hey, we'll just piece this together, but there's different ingredients. And so you don't have a job that tracks your kids' school year calendar, so different ingredient. Mike travels, your dad was home, different ingredients. The hours in the first 5 years of a startup are not typical. So let's go back to that conversation a little bit and what you heard and what you sort of gave yourself permission to be open to.
Yeah. We started having these conversations just as you were launching Scared Confident, and some of the initial conversations that we had and that you had on the show, I was so excited and so grateful that you were talking about it for not only for me, but for women in general and humans in general, because we don't talk about these things. I think the way that I was raised is very typical to say that you should be able to do things on your own. You should be able to figure it out. And of course, like if your kids come first, you're going to be able to just do it, and of course you're going to be able to run your own home. Like, goodness gracious, like you can't like find a way to get your own laundry done and make sure that your family gets fed, like as a bare minimum. And like you said, getting the permission, hearing that a normal human being was having help in their home to just get things done and to be able to prioritize the thing. Like I just said, prioritize the time with my family snuggled up on a couch watching a movie, not stressing about all the things that hadn't been done. I'd always seen any sort of help, even having like a weekly or monthly or whatever it is, cleaning crew come in and clean your home is a huge luxury, but that help exists for a reason. And it makes you a better fill in the blank, leader, person at work, coworker, friend, mom, wife, but we just don't give ourselves permission. And so I'm so glad that you're opening that conversation. It's so important.
I think it is this weird balance and balance isn't even the right word. I don't know what the word is. Insert blank. It's this weird thing where I never want there to be something where there's something that feels weird between the people that work on side of our teams and us as a leader. And so the idea of sheepishly sort of whispering to each other, like, you have help, what's it look like? I don't want my people to know that I have somebody who does my laundry. But the reality is we only have so many hours. And so how much more can I prepare for the thing I'm leading, for the strategy we're putting together, for the board meeting you need to be at? How much clearer is your mind to rest so that you can be whole on the inside? And I think that, and we're in the Midwest, I do think it's regional a little bit, but that was the thing for me is like, I don't mind telling my peers that I have help, but I was more uncomfortable with the idea of that my team knew that I had all this help. But I got to the place where I realized I'm perpetuating a really dangerous mirage that I can have 4 kids and all of the mess that comes with that, all the food they eat, all the laundry they make, the activities that we joyfully get to be a part of in the nights and weekends as the kids get older. It's not functional that I'm still able to be a human being if I'm also doing the rest of it. I think women in particular start to lose themselves at this age where you did pick a career, you did pick how many kids you wanted to have, you did pick how close or far away you wanted to live from family, and now you feel like you're just facilitating everybody's expectations of you, but you don't actually get to experience anything.
We're taught that we shouldn't need help and that we shouldn't ask for help because it's these things that come naturally, especially to us as human beings, but especially as women. Like, we should have these homes that we should love and be able to take care of in the very small margins that we have. And we should be able to completely care for ourselves and our families and be there for our friends and do all the things without any help at all. And when you let yourself zoom out from that, it's really silly. And even asking for help, we're talking about being able to bring someone in that's their job to do a thing, to watch your kids or to help you with your house, but also friends. Like, I don't think that we even truly are raised to embrace asking friends and neighbors for help. I was not explicitly raised. My mom never told me to do this, but I was the kind of person that if you come into somebody's house and they're like, do you want something to drink? Do you want anything to eat? You say, no, I'm fine. I don't want any water. I'm okay. it's pretty ridiculous when you think about it. The resistance to help. It's pretty proud too when you really zoom out.
Was it hard for you to change your thinking? Because there's likely somebody listening to this is like, this sounds great, but it takes financial resources that I might not have, that I might not think I have. I'm prioritizing other things instead. Was it an easy mental switch for you to be like, now I'm spending money on this? I think there's a perception if you're CEO, you're automatically rich. Need to dispel said myth.
Yeah. I mean, especially,
early,
starting a startup. I mean, absolutely not. No. Time and money both. I mean, both are scarce, especially, I mean, that's my experience of starting a startup. So that's all I can speak to is time is scarce, money is scarce, and they're both uncertain because you don't know what next month, next quarter, next year is going to look like. And so it was definitely a conversation and a decision of, okay, how are we going to do these things? And we've been paying for childcare since our kids were born, as a lot of parents do. And so it was like, okay, well, every time we think we're air quotes done as our kids get older, it's like, just kidding. We still need after school help. We still need this. So we just looked at what we were already doing, what we have been doing, and just said, okay, how do we stretch it a little and rethink it? I think going back to one of those asking for more help, that was one thing that you really helped me see was like, okay, so we need after school help. That's something that we've been conscious of and comfortable with for a while. Like it is not really possible for us to have our kids come home from school and not have someone there. What if we ask, as we're hiring that person, if they'd also be comfortable with picking up our groceries, with helping with the boys' laundry? And come to find out, those are very normal things to ask for that nobody had talked to me about, to say, these people that you're already comfortable getting help from, what if you ask them to do a little bit more? And even if that's more hours or more raising the hourly rate or whatever you're doing, looking for opportunities to get more support. For some reason, we always look, I think, for the bare minimum amount of support when we could be getting so much more of the help that we really need.
I feel like I've gotten my PhD in finding people who are willing to help. I have like...
That's what you told me. You were like all these places that you were looking.
I was like church, the car, like the coffee shop, waiters and waitresses, like anybody who is touching me, if they have a way, and if they're super conscientious, if they're paying attention, if they're thinking ahead, I'm like, oh, your brain works in a way that I might need. And I've found even these high school students, I'm like, I think I could literally pay one of them $15 a week to come get my car, fill it up with gas, take it through the car wash, sweep it out, and bring it back to me. I bet I could get that done for $15 a week. But we don't think about each one of those steps. I'm not doing that. But I'm just
but somebody who's listening might need to do that. Yes. Their neighbor's kid might for 1 hour a week
do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we do make it kind of too hard sometimes, I think. And like you said, even timing something like laundry, how many hours a week are you actually spending on it? And sitting down with your spouse, if you have shared money, and really talking through, what is it worth to you for me to have 2 more hours of availability for you? And how can we find it in our budget in a place where we don't necessarily have to miss something we love as a family? I think can really change the dynamic of a home. So, okay, we're off our soapbox.
Ask for help.
Ask for help. That's right. How have you learned to deal with the pressure that comes with your job?
They're super obvious, but sleep.
You like to sleep or goes away? I feel like people are...
Both, right?
Okay.
So it goes away, but I need to sleep. Like typically I start to overthink things. I succumb to pressure more easily. And then I don't show up well for other people. Like, and it all goes back to rest. And when more is going on, you need more rest. And my co-founder, Adam, is really good at that and really like respects rest. And so he's a good reminder for me.
But he can get his body to sleep even when he's stressed.
Yeah. I think he's like the opposite of me. He's like, and sleep.
Yeah, my body doesn't want to get out of bed when I'm stressed.
I can't fall asleep.
Yeah, that's what other people, their mind just go and go. And I'm like avoidance, crawl in a hole and just sleep.
I don't know. I have a hard time falling asleep. And then exercise. You're an early morning workout person too. Yep. I get up and it's worth it. I get up at 5 and I work out because that's the only time it works for me. Not because I'm like, one of those hustle and grinds. This is my recipe for success when I wake up in the morning. Not that. It's just that's literally when it works for me. And I feel so much better. I just feel so much better when I move my body and so much worse when I don't. To me, the pressure and anxiety and stress shows up. It's a stomach thing. Like my stomach gets tight and then, I just have a hard time resting. And then it's a spiral. When you can't sleep, then you get more stressed.
My mom always says the bad news bears come out when you're tired, because it's true. It's like everything's big and hard. There's no good news.
I mean, it's one of those things
Your
that
body just can't process anything.
Yeah. And as you get older and as you get to know yourself better, you start to realize, and it's so silly, but it's like, okay, well, it's 10. I'm starting to stress out. I'm very tired. I should probably just go to sleep. Like nothing's going to get solved tonight. Whereas years ago, I would have been like, nope, I got to stay up. I got to figure this out. I should probably stay up and take some notes and power through it and send some emails, but rest.
Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, something that'd be really interesting. We're 3 years into Casted and you're 20?
17. Yeah.
17. Okay.
Almost 18.
Into Element 3. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what hasn't changed as far as like what keeps you up at night and what has remained that maybe is surprising to you and what hasn't. I think it's probably easy to think about the things that are so much easier or so much harder. Somebody told me once that when you get married, the things you're fighting about now are going to be things you fight about your entire marriage. So for you, since you've been doing this for 17 years, are there any surprising things that are still stressors or still get you excited too? What has remained all these years?
One is that at the face value, it's not going to feel very comforting, but one is that it's always hard. And there's somewhere along the line sort of becomes this peacefulness with accepting that, where you don't feel it in the same like white knuckled gripping like you do at the beginning. I remember for years and years and years waiting for this like sweet relief when I just had solved it. Because every other thing you do in your life, you start a book, you finish it, you start a game, you finish it, you like do a Rubik's Cube, it's done. Like everything has kind of this nice ending. And in business, I remember at the beginning being like, oh my word, we stick the landing on the year, there's just another one. And so I remember being like, oh my word, are you serious that at no point in my existence on this planet are all of those things going to be perfectly aligned? And kind of panicking. And then there's like this sweet acceptance at some point where you start to trust your ability to solve. And I've become less like connected to the outcome of whether or not we're like all our clients are happy or all our clients are sad. Obviously, it's better when they're happy, but I just know we're always going to be solving somewhere. And so I think as the company matures and as your team matures, you start to put your weight on your ability to solve well together and less about the outcome of it. I think you are better at this than me. I really underestimated the role that culture and purpose clarity play in creating belief and then ultimately momentum in a business. And I came into the world of business through the door of finance and like really I feel like knew a lot about the X's and O's of business, but didn't pay a lot of attention in my organizational behavioral health classes in college. Like I literally remember being like, OBHR, I don't even know what that means. And I just didn't take it seriously. And I think in the later stages of Element 3, we created culture through fun and games and competition and sort of this like youthful exuberance. And that was like fun and shiny to be around, but it wasn't really substantive. And I think I've matured into understanding the role that plays in creating belief and ultimately momentum. And I think you saw that earlier.
Well, thank you. But to see it and to achieve it are two very different things, right? And especially as you grow, especially in the midst of a pandemic, especially if one of those beliefs that you want to nurture in your culture is wholeheartedness and like the kind of conversations that you're having and really real, authentic conversations. One thing that I've been talking about a lot lately is if you want flexibility and you want authenticity and you want wholeheartedness, the first thing you have to do is acknowledge and embrace that is not the same for everyone. Like flexibility for me is not flexibility for everyone. Wholeheartedness for me is not the same as it is for everyone. And that's hard. And truly achieving that and truly achieving like openness and diversity, not only of demographics and firmographics, but of thought and how people show up. I mean, like it's one thing to want it and to believe in it and to really talk about it and invest in it early on. And it's another thing to scale it and show up for it and create psychological safety around it. And it's so important. I think we'll always be trying for it and hoping for it and finding out, oop, we missed there and we're not what we want to be over here. But and that's been an ongoing learning for me is like, wow, okay, this is truly something we have to work for all the time.
Do you think in like an example of like a value of wholeheartedness, I totally get the idea of, I equate it to this idea of like, I don't know, vulnerability or transparency kind of thing. And I get that's different for everybody. Do you think it's our job though as leaders to establish this is what the floor of wholeheartedness, this fine line between accepting the fact that, hey, everybody's got a different sort of comfort level with this idea, but also culturally creating a floor of expectation of what this means. So as you think about something like wholeheartedness, where does your head go? What have you sort of discerned? And there's probably not a neat ending yet, but I'm just sort of curious. I can learn from that.
Well, I feel like if I keep saying the word wholeheartedness, I'm going to manifest Brene Brown and she'll show up and we'll actually be best friends, which is my one real hope in life. You said something about setting expectations and I think bringing it all together. And I'm not saying I'm good at this by any stretch of the imagination, not even close, but it's in work and in parenting, there's this balance of allowing and encouraging, show up as yourself and be who you are and feel your actual feelings and share your ideas and don't be anybody else. Like don't be who you think other people want you to be. But that also comes with, in parenting and in work, expectations for what good looks like, what is expected as part of this team, this family, this group. I mean, I wouldn't say, hey, yeah, my child, be who you want to be. And if you really feel like you need to, as an 11-year-old, tear up the pillows on the couch, like that's not okay. Like that's not you being who you are. Same thing at work. I mean, if who you are is something that's disruptive to somebody else or disrespectful to somebody else, like that's not okay. And unless we say that and establish that, and like you said, establish guidelines and expectations, you have to define that part if you're going to even give people the freedom to show up as themselves and to be who they are and to be authentic and vulnerable. You have to say, and here's what we mean by that. Here are the ground rules. Here are the guardrails. Otherwise, it can become really uncomfortable for everybody else really fast.
What have you learned about yourself as a leader in this experience? First 3 years of Casted?
That I can't do it all, that I need help, both in work and outside of work, that I need to more often than not trust my gut. That has probably been the biggest learning. Like even when I don't want to listen to my gut and whatever it's telling me, I'm like trying really hard to ignore it. Trust my gut.
Are you super intuitive?
Yeah, that's something I've learned. I mean, I think if somebody had told me that when I was 20 or 10 or whatever, I'd have been like, yeah, that makes sense. But it's very clear to me now. I've learned that the more I trust my instinct and really lean into what I know and feel is right, but also like embrace what I don't, that's where the fun is. And like you said, it's never just like parenting, running a business and being a parent are very similar. It doesn't ever get easier. I know that is parenting and I'm seeing it in business. It never, ever, ever gets easier. It just gets different. Like the challenges that we had in our first year are different than the ones that we're having now. And I know 5 years from now, it's going to be different still, but it's just going to be different.
And that's when you start to learn great people with shared values, aligned to a mission we really care about. All that stuff takes over when you're not winning anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's easy. Everybody wants to join the teams that are winning,
yeah.
But it's when you're really aligned on mission and values that you can still win well when there's headwinds.
For sure.
Lindsay, thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Love walking this journey with you of trying to figure out life and business and also continue to evolve individually as people. My mission for Scare Confident is to help women confidently pursue a life of and. and I want to be available to you. I'm passionate about vulnerably stepping into my stories so that it can help women. This is about creating the resource that I wish I had as I was going through this journey. So if you have questions, comments, or feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Text me at 317-350-8921. So here's what this tool is. It's a personal number that I've set up for Scared Confident. It comes straight to my phone, and it allows me to see and us to interact with one another like directly. So I can text you back and answer your questions. So this opportunity to be able to interact directly, not necessarily have to jump through the algorithms of social media, but to have a really direct conversation and relationship is what I'm really excited about with this project of Scared Confident. If we help just one, the whole project will be worth it. So 317-350-8921 is the way that you can get in touch with me. And don't think your question's stupid. It's not. We're all wondering the same thing. So step into courage, ask for help, and help other people who have the exact same questions normalize their journey. Thanks for sharing this with me.